Hello. Hi, I've got someone watching. Hi guys, thanks for joining me. I've never done a live before, so I can't even begin to tell you how nervous I am about this. I'm just waiting for Sari to join me. I'm not even sure how I get Sari to join me. Ah, there we go. Just adding her now. Hi guys. Oh, hi Sue.
Yay!
Hey Sari, you there?
Hi, okay.
Hi.
I didn't real
I can't
I
believe
didn't
I've
realize
actually
this
done
was your
this. 'Cause-
I can't believe it's your actual first ever live. I did that with Hayley the other month and
Well, no, yeah, I've
you've
done
been on
one
before, haven't you?
before.
Right.
I've done them with Martine
Oh
Alexander,
yeah, yeah.
but I've never actually gone live on my own channel before. So it's the
Right.
first. I'm so nervous. The irony that we're going to be chatting about anxiety. You wouldn't even believe the anxiety I've had about doing this. The irony is like incredible. I just
Oh,
had to
you'll
go
be
and take my jeans off and put my tracksuit bottoms on because I couldn't actually breathe properly. I was getting that stressed like 10 minutes ago.
Well, I've got a shirt on and then I've got my stripy pajama bottoms on. I don't
Yay! So we're all in comfy.
Yeah, definitely.
I need to. Oh, I can breathe a bit now. Thank God.
And
And then
relax.
the internet stopped working like 10 minutes ago. So I was like, oh my God, I've not even got any Wi Fi. I can't do it.
I know, but to be honest, it's pretty rubbish for most people at the minute, drops in and out. But you know what? If it does, it does. You can always do it
Yeah,
again. Don't worry about
not the
it.
end of the world.
No,
Put
it's
it in
not.
perspective. So thank you so much for doing
It's a
this with me.
pleasure.
Because originally I sort of thought, right, I'll do this on my own and then I can chat to everyone about anxiety and my experience of it. But then when you said you jump on board, I thought even better because then we've got a professional's approach to it, and hopefully you'll be able to help me and everyone else who needs a bit of advice about how to deal with anxiety.
Yeah.
I know we spoke before, haven't we? We spoke for since about 18 months ago was the first time
Yeah.
here, was it?
God, is it really that long ago? Yeah, probably.
I think
Yeah,
it was,
probably is.
yeah. I think it was, but obviously I've spoke about like my anxiety struggles since well, I've had them since I was about 11. That was the first time I went to the doctors with anxiety because I couldn't
Gosh.
breathe. So my mum took me to the doctors thinking I had some sort of asthma because I kept saying like when you can't catch a wave, you can't get that deep breath.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. And the doctor gave me an inhaler because they thought I might have asthma. And then later on, we realised that it was actually anxiety that I was suffering with. So I think I must have been suffering with it long before then. But then obviously that's when it was officially diagnosed that I had anxiety. So it's 27 years. So I'm 38
27 years. I'm trying to think, how long did I have it for?
exhausting.
It is exhausting. I think I was diagnosed in my early 20s, and then I probably had about a 10-year period of really bad anxiety. So not quite as many years as what you've had to suffer.
So you didn't experience it as a child then?
Well, I mean, I probably did, but I probably didn't notice it or put it down to that. It would have manifested maybe in, I don't know, headaches or stomach problems, or it shows itself in many, many different ways, doesn't it? But there's no way that I just suddenly started being an overthinker in my early 20s. So I must have, I was an overthinker and quite a control freak probably my whole entire life, up until now. So I'd imagine that I would have been, but I just wouldn't have been aware of it.
Yeah. I don't know the statistics on anxiety, but I would say most people at some point in their lives have some degree of anxiety, whether it even is just like a passing phase of anxiety for like an upcoming job interview or just something that you're nervous about.
Well, we all actually have the beginning of a panic attack probably numerous times a day, because say if I'm sat here and the door slams and I just hear a really loud bang, I'm going to be startled. And that kicks off fight or flight. And
I'm terrible for that,
Well, that happens to everybody, probably every single day. But the difference is then you go, oh, it's just the door. Then you're thinking about it, just disappears. So you settle instantly. Whereas anxiety, because people are so scared of it because they don't understand it. And so what happens is they go, oh, but why has that happened, and what does that mean, and how long is it going to stay, and that's why it's like that millisecond of being startled then continues for hours and hours on end, and that's
it can last all day. I've had like phases of anxiety that have lasted weeks or months, and with me it's like, once I feel it, I can get obsessed about one particular thing, like a health anxiety issue, or just, you know, worrying about the kids, or something else that's going on, worry about work or whatever. And for me, the first thing that goes is my appetite. Like, I feel like my throat has just closed up and I can't eat. And then I drop loads of weight. So then that stresses me out.
Yeah.
And when I'm having like an anxiety attack, my heart's racing. It feels like it's going to pump out my chest. I feel like I'm going to die.
Well,
my arms got weak as well. Like,
there's loads of horrible physical symptoms that people experience, and people will experience a whole range of them, or some people have certain ones that happen all the time. And I think again, that's scary for people because they don't understand what's happening. And you know, the part of the brain that forms habit, so the part of the brain that deals with the fight or flight part, is a really old primal part of the brain. I like to, you know, don't mince my words, so it's like the thickest part of the brain, basically. It's not very intelligent, although it keeps us alive, so it's pretty good. But that part of the brain also regulates your heartbeat, your temperature. So as soon as you start to think, oh, in 2 weeks' time, I've got a presentation and what's it going to be like? Your brain doesn't realise, oh, sorry, that's in 2 weeks. We're not bothering with that now. It just takes as if there's a problem, there's some danger, we need to help her. And so it will like just instantly, so it'll just instantly speed your heart rate up. And then people go, oh, my heart's beating, I can feel it in my chest. You know, I can remember when I was really bad years ago, because mine would last months. And that's why eventually I ended up in hospital, because I pretty much begged to go to hospital, because I was like, I can't continue like this for much longer. And so people will then feel these things, and it will then sort of escalate to a point where we're just constantly pumping our bodies with adrenaline and stress hormone, cortisol, because it's become a habit. And it sounds like I'm minimizing it, saying it's a habit, like it feels much worse than a habit. And this is why I always tell people I've been in hospital, because I've had people that have sometimes mentioned on my videos, you don't understand what anxiety is because you've not had it as bad as me. You can't have had it that bad if you think it's that simple to fix. And I'm like, listen, I can't be any worse than being locked up in a mental institute for a month. It was, you know, it wasn't mild. And I say that because, you know, because actually it really is simpler than we realize. We massively overcomplicate what is actually a really sophisticated system in our body that works super well, but we just misuse it because we don't understand it. We just don't understand it.
Makes sense. It makes complete sense. But I think when you're in that phase of anxiety, nothing anyone says to you calms you down or makes you feel any better, does it?
No, because in that moment, and that's the thing, where that's why there's nothing to do in those moments other than to allow your body to settle. Because you're right, I had this discussion with a friend of mine who teaches the other day, and said, they were talking about what can we do to help children when they have panic attacks in school and things like that. And I was joking, like, she's a really good friend, and I was joking, I said, I bet I can tell you exactly what you do. And she's like, go on then. So I said, You'll sit them down, you'll get them a tissue, you'll get them a glass of water, and you'll be like, you're okay, and you'll fuss, and you'll get a bit panicky yourself, and like, that's exactly what we do. You know, it's like we then all go into panic, when actually what we really need in those moments is just that reassurance. And it actually, panic attacks, the amount of adrenaline we put into our bodies to have a panic attack, it doesn't actually stay in our system for that long. It's minutes. But the reason it seems to last a lot longer, and it doesn't just do its thing, is because we worry about the physical symptoms. So I'll often use the example, if I was sat in a doctor's surgery and the doctor said, right, Sari, I'm going to put some adrenaline, I'm going to inject you with adrenaline. You might feel shaky, you might feel faint, you might feel sick, all of these things, but it's only going to last about 8 minutes in total. And after 4 minutes, it's going to drop by half, and most of the symptoms are going to disappear. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to sit there and have a great time while the doctor's putting adrenaline in me, but I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to fear it, because I know what to expect, and I know it's going to pass. And that's effectively what we're doing when we're overthinking, is it's like we're injecting ourselves with adrenaline. But the reason it would always settle within that short period of time if we leave it alone. But what we do when we go, oh no, my heart's beating really fast now, and oh, I'm cold. Am I clammy? And then we'll say, do I feel clammy to you?
I
And
get that. I
oh,
get
are my
really
feet cold? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then we're like, oh, why? And that's just like going, here's another adrenaline injection, here's another one, here's another. And so there's no rest from it because it's constant, anxious thinking. And
then after that, after you've had an anxiety attack, it's exhausting, isn't it? I'm always so tired. I feel like some days when my anxiety's bad, I feel like, even though I feel like I've ran 20k because I'm so exhausted from everything that's going on in my brain. And I want my brain to just slow down or just take my head off and give it a shake and put it back on.
But the thing is as well, we have this sort of, this isn't a criticism of people, because I've done all of these things. Like, believe me, I always joke and say, I would hate to add up the amount of money I've spent on therapy, books. I once ordered, have you heard of something called the Alpha Stim?
No, that's one I've not heard of.
Now, don't you dare go and order this. I'll shout at you if you do. But listen to this. You can do what you want. But it's this machine, and it cost about £600. And it's basically little earphones like this, and it's this little machine. And some people swear by it, but I'll explain that in a minute. And it's this little machine that you put on your ears, and it gives like electric currents into your ears that apparently does something to your brain to help reduce anxiety.
Oh, my health anxiety won't be able to cope with that.
Exactly.
I won't be able to do that.
Exactly. So, but for me, it was like, it got to the point where I was like, I've got to try it, because at the end of the day,
yourself to try and slow down.
But I was like, but the books weren't working. The all the different types of therapy I've had every type of therapy you can probably ever think of. But the thing is, because anxious feelings come from anxious thinking, we can override anything with our thinking. And so I got the machine, and I remember sitting there, and I opened it, and I'm like, right, and I'm already starting thinking, is this safe? Like, should I really be doing this? And I was kind of excited at the same time, because it was going to cure my world, And anyway, as soon as I put the electrodes on my ears and I started to read the instructions, I was like, I can't do it. What if it sends weird messages to my brain and makes me ill? What if it gives me a heart attack? What if
that's what
I was just thinking. Like, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
So I put it in the box, and I sent it back. I got me 500 quid back, and that was it. So that was that over. And I tried everything else.
To be electrocuting ourselves to make ourselves better.
No, but to be fair, the people who own it will probably watch this and absolutely curse me. Now, people have said it's worked for them, because it's like hypnotherapy. I am trained to give hypnotherapy, but hypnotherapy never worked for me, because when I went in the room to have hypnotherapy, my mind's going, when I shut my eyes, I don't like this. And then the room starts to spin. I'm like, the room's spinning, I'm anxious. And I just open my eyes instantly. So it's not that I'm saying these things don't work for people, but what I am saying is, because anxiety always comes from your overthinking, you can overthink anything. That's why some people will take, I've tried lots of different medication in the past. Some people, beta blockers worked great for me at one time. Other people say it makes them feel unwell, because they're probably going, oh, I don't like this. And what about the side effects?
A couple of years ago, I was suffering quite badly, and the doctor prescribed me beta blockers with propranolol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But because part of my anxiety is health anxiety, and like something we were chatting about the other day when you said all anxiety is to do with health anxiety, isn't it? But it was in particular, I was worrying about something in particular that numerous doctors had told me I was fine, but I just didn't believe them. I just needed that extra reassurance from everyone. So the doctor gave me these propranolol tablets to try and slow my heart rate, because my heart was racing constantly, and it was exhausting, and I was sensing the tiger in the room all the time. But I couldn't take them. I took them a little bit, and then, because the irony was that my health anxiety was stressing me out so much that I was thinking, I'm taking these tablets and they might do something really bad to my heart. They might stop my heart or whatever. So I didn't actually take them. So for me personally, medication isn't really the answer, because I'd be too nervous about getting addicted to it, or it's going to do something to my brain or change me. And so for me, I've had to try and navigate other ways around it. And I think in the last couple of years, the main thing that I've said so many times is yoga for me, because it gives me that half an hour every day where I can just focus on my breathing, because my breathing is really affected with my anxiety. I really struggle a lot to get deep breaths when I think about it.
Because and it's because you're again, you're overthinking it. You're trying too hard. Like in my book, one of the examples that I give is you can't pass out from holding your breath. If you try and hold your breath to kill yourself, it ain't going to work because your body takes over. We don't need to tell ourselves how to breathe. Our body knows exactly how to breathe. And yet sometimes people can find it helps to go breathe, to remind themselves. And all you're doing there is really focusing on slowing that down. And if that works, brilliant. But actually, if that doesn't work, your breathing will regulate by itself when you stop interfering with it. It's funny you should say about yoga because, again, I mean, I've got no shame whatsoever, really. But one of the things, when I was in the Priory for the month, they tried to get me to do yoga. I thought, oh, give it a go. And, you know, when you're anxious, you don't really want to be around people. So I thought, oh, I'll just go, pretty much forcing me to go. So I'm in this, like, really quiet yoga room with everybody really peaceful, doing whatever it was I was doing. And the lady, bless her, she must have been in her 70s. She's coming around and she tries to help me. So she pushes my legs back. I did this almighty fart.
Oh my God, mortified.
Because she got, so I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I need to get out of it. I'm so mortified. And it was literally like, I thought, that is my yoga career over.
Well, I mean, I always do mine on my own. I never do it with anyone, so I can be as embarrassing as I want because I'm on my own.
Yeah, and normally something like that. I mean, the fact that I'll talk about it live on Instagram and I've written it in my book, it doesn't bother me. But at the time, because I was so anxious and insecure, things that wouldn't normally bother you really do bother you.
Yeah, something like that would actually stress me out because I always care about what everyone thinks about me, so that would be really stressful.
But that's only because it would probably be in the Daily Mail the next day that you fart in public. Like, it doesn't matter for me. Can't control it. Corrie Star can't control her bowels.
Oh wow, I mean, that's one headline you never want to see, isn't it? Especially about yourself.
But yeah, so I mean, again, you know, that joking apart, that's an example of how whatever it is that relaxes us or doesn't is going to be individual to each person. And that's because, again, we're experiencing it through our thinking. So yoga, we're experiencing through our thinking. So if we tell ourselves, this is good for me, I can relax when I do this, it's great, then it's going to work. Whereas now for me, it wouldn't be that relaxing because I'd be like, oh my God, what if I fart? And you know, it's that our thinking creates that experience, and that's how it works for everything.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just noticing everyone, I can see all your comments and it's really hard for me to answer while we're chatting, but a lot of people are asking, are we going to answer some of the questions that we sent in? So
of course,
do you want to pick some and then hopefully we'll be able to answer some?
Okay,
we've had quite a few, and there's some really interesting ones that I'm not qualified to answer, so I'll leave some of them to you.
Okay. So this is one that's linked into something that you've already said, which is I was wondering why I lose my appetite sometimes when I'm particularly anxious. It happened last month for 2 weeks right after I started year 13, and I don't know how to stop it from happening, and it only makes me feel more anxious. So this is really, really common. I answered this person and gave them some idea of what to do, like practically, you know, things like, don't expect yourself when you feel sick from anxiety to sit and eat a massive big plate of food. It's going to be too overwhelming and too daunting. So actually, little and often, I would just maybe have a cup of tea and a dry crumpet, which sounds gross, but actually it was all I could tolerate.
What helped me when I lose my appetite is smoothies, because I drop weight really easily, which isn't a good thing. I know, you know, a lot of people might say, oh, that's great, but it's really not, because I'm only little and I end up looking like a child. And smoothies are really good because you can pack loads of stuff into them and still get all your nutrients that you need, and you can just sip them, and your appetite will come back. It always comes back, even if it's, you know, quite a while. It seems like a long time before you can eat a full meal again. Like I've had times where I can't even, you know, get through a pot noodle. Normally I can devour a pot noodle. But,
and again, it's nature's that's nature's way, because when we've got all that adrenaline in our body and we go into fight or flight, what the body will do is it will get you ready to run. And you know, in caveman times, that was, you wouldn't go running away from the enemy with a big full stomach. So your body, this is why, again, some people will go to the toilet and have diarrhea if they're anxious, because it's the body's natural way of going, right, there's danger. Let's clear you out and get you ready for what is ahead. And so it's really common to feel sick. But it's a bit like, you know, when you wake up in the morning, if you feel a little bit sick, sometimes if I don't feel like eating, which is not very often, but sometimes I will have a cup of tea first, because I think once you start to taste something, then your appetite naturally then comes up without too much thought. So little and often, and just really bland stuff.
And don't stress about it.
No, as soon as your thinking settles,
it will come back.
Yeah, it will always come back. And like you say, if you are particularly small anyway, and you do need the calories more importantly, then, you know, speak to your doctor about supplements or anything that you can get, that if you need, I mean, obviously, or a nutritionist, that you can get, you know, what your body actually needs. But it's only going to last as long as you're overthinking and stressing. And so again, if you then worry about the fact you're not eating, it's going to keep the anxiety there for longer.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone experiences anxiety in different ways, don't they? And it always passes. Like I've got it on my bio. My favourite saying, my mantra for life is "This too shall pass." I've not got any tattoos, but I think if I had one, I would have
that's what it'd say
on me to just remind me all the time. This too shall pass.
Yeah, absolutely. Always, yeah, you're right.
Another question, sorry, go on.
So, how to manage my daily fear of getting ill with a specific thing, headaches, colds, etc. Worry about this every day.
Isn't it?
Worry about it every day and don't know how to control my fear and worry. Well, this is the thing. Do you know, it's so funny, while I'm on here now, I've just had a notification popped up to say my daughter has not got COVID, bless her. If you're on, Maya, you've not got COVID, kid.
Brilliant.
I'll tell her in a minute. So when we worry about anything, other than right this very second, anything that's even going to potentially happen in a minute's time, 10 minutes time, an hour's time, we have absolutely no control over. We cannot predict the future. Things like health, illness, you know, we don't know. If you think about, I don't know, a year ago, if people had said, oh, there's going to be this virus and we're all going to be locked down, we'd be like, don't be ridiculous. That's never going to happen. Like, nobody predicted that this was going to happen. And we can't predict things.
I did. I predicted it, sorry, in February. I was everyone, because I'm obsessive with my health, like I've mentioned. Everyone at work was laughing at me and calling me crazy, because I was sat on the train in February with like my scarf up here. I had all my anti-bac wipes on the table in the train, and I was like, I'm not getting COVID. I don't even think anyone thought it was in the country at that point, but I was like, it's here, I can feel it.
I can feel it in the air. Well, we were, you know, we're always, the irony is that we can all catch colds, anything, illnesses. None of us know what illnesses we're going to get as we get older or anything like that. We just don't know. And yet the more we try and figure out what it might be and what that might look like and how we'll manage, all that's doing is creating suffering in this moment that is completely not going to make any difference to the outcome. It's just creating suffering for you right now in this moment. And you know, I think a lot of the things that people don't realize with thoughts is that they think that because they've got a negative thought that pops in, like, I don't know, let's say I had a thought going, what if I died of cancer when I'm older? And that's a horrible thought, but I can't control that thought might just pop into my head. But the key is to realize, well, it's just a thought. It doesn't mean I am going to. And it certainly doesn't mean that I now need to figure out what would happen if I did. And one of the things I talk to my clients about is using your full stop. So if you have a thought that's negative, you know, we're taught in school to be creative and adventurous with our words and our sentences and expand it and all of that stuff, when actually when it comes to your mental health and your worries, you want to do the opposite. So if I have a thought that says you might get cancer, now what I do in my head is I literally tell myself, full stop, you might get cancer, full stop. You know, and that's not going to feel nice to think that, but that's as far as it's going for me. Because in the past, when I used to be anxious, I'd go, well, what would I do? And oh God, that'd be terrible, wouldn't it? And you know, and what if I was in pain? When, you know, I'm worrying about being in pain when I'm imagining myself being 70 and having cancer. You know, it's just all made up, like, because we don't know any of this stuff, and it's catastrophizing, isn't it?
because
Totally.
I catastrophize everything, like, and I can't help it. I've done it my whole life, and I think I don't know if my mum's watching this, but I'm sure she won't mind me saying that. I think it is a little bit genetic, because I grew up with my mum always being anxious about everything and being overprotective with us, and always thinking, you know, what if something happens or whatever. And I'm exactly the same, and I try my hardest not to be with the kids, with my own kids, because I don't want to put it on them. But already I can see Freya gets anxious about things, and now I try, and hopefully I've got a bit of experience to be able to spot it and say, no, maybe you shouldn't think about it like this. Try and think about it that way. And I know you've met Freya, haven't you? And you've helped her last year with a couple of things.
Or even that thing of not trying to say, right, because again, people will say, oh, change it to positive thoughts. Now, again, when I was severely anxious, it was almost like, do you not think I've tried that? Like, it's not working. You know, it's not always that easy.
Yeah.
We don't need to interfere with our thoughts.
No kidding.
It's not that we have to change them or swap them, or it's just that once you start to understand really how thoughts work, which is what helped me, when I really properly understood it, I realized that thoughts are all actually completely neutral until we bring them to life. And so it doesn't matter what thoughts we have, whether they're negative or not. If we pay no attention to them, they become irrelevant. But what we do is we jump on them because they're habitual, and we go, oh, I've had this thought before. And we go into problem solving. But all problem solving does with anxiety is creates more thoughts about anxiety, and it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is. I'm doing a little course at the moment in CBT, and I've just learned that it's an ancient philosopher came up with the idea that it's not what happens to us in life that's bad, it's the way we see it or something. I'm not saying
it's always about our perception.
Yeah,
it's all our perception. So for example, since I've been exploring these principles in my own life, and my own relationship with anxiety is completely different. So, but if I look back to how I was before and how I am now, so let's just say, for example, so my sister was in hospital. She's out now, but she was in hospital for a couple of days. She's with COVID, and it's the one thing that we've all been waiting to sort of, we don't want to hear, is that, oh my goodness, she's really vulnerable. What if she gets COVID? How are we going to manage? And our worst fears had come true. She was in hospital and she was struggling to breathe. And what really struck me in that moment is, of course I had a good cry. Of course I was scared. Of course I had, negative thoughts about the fact that she was in hospital and what if she died. I can't help that. They just come. We can't control the thoughts that we have. But what I did realize is that when you understand more about how all this stuff works, even when you're sad and you're a bit scared and you're a bit worried, there's like a sense of calm and a sense of knowing that's like, do you know what? We'll be okay. And I think that's what's missing when we're really anxious and in that spiral. We start to really lose faith in our capabilities as a human being.
Yeah, and it's almost the anticipation of something bad, isn't it? It's the sense of doom with anxiety that is worse.
And that's why it's all
whatever it is sometimes.
Yeah, and it's all made up because none of it actually exists. It's just our perception of what might happen. So again, the suffering when my sister was in hospital, it wasn't the actual suffering of her there in that moment. What was creating my suffering was my imagination going, what if she gets worse?
What might happen?
Might happen. And that's what creates the suffering.
Because anxiety, I also read somewhere that depression is when you are thinking about the past too much and your regrets, and anxiety tends to be worrying about the future and trying to control what can happen in the future. And it made sense to me, that because I've felt low. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say I've had actual depression in the past, but a lot of it is about what has already happened in your life. But for me, with anxiety, it is definitely a sense of what might happen, what's about to happen. It's that sense of doom, isn't it? And you think you can feel like something bad's going to happen, and it's just awful, or it's trying to control the future and worrying what will happen.
And it's still, even in a way, trying to control the past because we want to try and change the fact that it happened. And again, the amount of, I went through a stage when my anxiety shifted and I wasn't anxious in that way anymore. I actually almost went through a little bit of a frustration and a grieving for like, oh, what a load of waste of time that was, when I could have felt like this now. Why didn't I come across it sooner, and all of that? But again, that's just another form of anxious thinking and a complete waste of time.
Can't help.
You know.
Sorry, there's a lady called Catherine, Catherine McLean, said, I've got to go and sort my child out in a minute. Please respond to one of my questions. I'm not sure which question Catherine sent. I'm not sure which question you've sent.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. I can see it, Samia. I can see it. No one in my family has anxiety, so why do I? Only started during lockdown, and now I worry daily I'm going to get ill. Okay, so some people will completely disagree with me on this, but it's not, anxiety is not something that you get because it's in your family. Like, we do pick up learned behaviours within families and things like that, but I'm one of 5 children, and I'm the one who got the anxiety. You know, it's not, we have the exact same upbringing. Everyone has their different ways. Some people will drink too much, some people might take drugs, some people will, I don't know, get really angry, and some people get anxious. Like, we all have our ways. So again, but what that shows is that's a little bit of anxious thinking there, of going, how come I've got this? Why me? Why? And it's us questioning what is, rather than actually in a time where, if we're feeling a bit scared or a bit overwhelmed, what we need is compassion and understanding, not questioning and criticism and pointing towards failure. Actually, I'm the one that's got this.
It doesn't matter why you've got it either, does it? What matters is how you deal with it. And actually, we don't need to question why we've got anxiety. And especially this year, it is no surprise that anyone has got anxiety.
I've never been so inundated with messages in my whole
entire
life as a psychotherapist.
Business is booming.
Yeah, well, but part of the reason is, and again, this is because when our state of mind is lower, our thinking is more contaminated, and we're much more likely to believe the thoughts that we're having to be true when they're not. And the way our state of mind is sometimes lower is when our world shrinks and our bubble gets smaller. So for some people, being in lockdown is hard because they're not speaking to as many people, they're not getting out as much. And so when your world shrinks, your thinking gets more contaminated. And rather than us just accepting that that's what it is, again, if you then start to go, oh, why now? Why me? All of that, that's just another form of anxious thinking. Yeah. But in case I forget to say this, if anyone has asked a question that we don't get to, I've got another couple on here from that people sent through. They can send me an inbox still. It's not a problem. Yeah. And I think someone had said something about children as well. I've got an online child course for anxiety that I used to charge for, but I just made it free in lockdown. So I've got that as well if anybody needs it. But just send me a message. It's not a problem.
What originally prompted me to do this was because I put a little Insta story up last week about me doing yoga and how I would recommend it to people who've got anxiety. And then I got quite a lot of DMs from people. And it was interesting. A lot of the DMs were from parents who've children, well, teenagers, saying that their teenagers are suffering with anxiety at the moment. And I guess it's to be expected a lot because of obviously all the mess up with A-levels and schools and colleges and universities.
So much uncertainty. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's no wonder that we're all feeling anxious. You know, like I say, this year it's just been it's been the most uncertain year ever for all of us in our lifetime, hasn't it?
And so the more we feel like things are uncertain,
we should put any pressure on ourselves.
No, yeah, you're right. And the more uncertain things feel, the more we have that sense of wanting to control. That, you know, we're going to get caught up in it because we can't control it. We've just got to take it one step at a time and do what follow your gut instinct and what you need to do as you go along.
Absolutely.
Shall I read out another one of these questions?
Yeah.
So I want to read this one because this person I felt really compassionate towards this person actually when they sent this. So I want to read this one out. So I've seen your post about it's entitled to you, but obviously I've got it here. I've seen your posts about depression and suicide. I felt down for years. Sometimes it's a lot worse than other times, but I suffer really badly from loneliness as well. I haven't worked for 6 months and I was recently dismissed from my job. I live alone, and although I have a close-knit circle of friends, I find it really difficult to talk to them. I didn't speak to my brother and his family for years, so I missed out on my nieces growing up. And I felt really bad about that for years and years. In my younger days, I had terrible alcohol and drug problems, but I've not touched drug for years and cut right back on my alcohol. I still feel desperately down and lonely a lot of times, but I've been helping my elderly neighbour as much as I can with his shopping. I do feel suicidal at times, but I try and cover up those thoughts with other thoughts about other things. But sometimes I think things can get on top of me and I feel I have nobody to turn to.
Oh, bless. That's really sad. That makes me really, really sad.
So,
go on.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say a lot of, I really feel with everything that this person said. And I think one thing they're doing that will be really helpful is trying to keep busy. And like, I don't know if it's a he or she, they said that they're helping the neighbour with the shopping and stuff, and they're contributing to someone else. They're helping somebody else. That other person needs them. And I think a lot of that is feeling, you want to feel needed by other people. And I think if they've got the time, then to help other people always makes you feel better in a weird way, doesn't it? It's a nice thing
because
to do,
again,
and I think that in turn will help them feel better about themselves, thinking that they're contributing to other people.
Yeah, and like you say, it's a bit of a distraction. And I think the other thing is, again, loneliness is a state of mind, again, that comes from our thinking, and we always think it depends on who you're around. Well, I can tell you now, when I was really anxious and depressed, I had a huge family around me. I had loads of friends around me, but I still felt lonely because in my head, it was just me. And so loneliness is not, you can be in a room with 1,000 people and feel lonely. It's more about your state of mind. And I think, and again, the reason I felt compassion towards this person is because I can see that they're holding on to things that they haven't done or should have done better, or drugs or alcohol. And actually what stands out for me is that you've stopped taking drugs, you've massively reduced your alcohol, you're going and helping elderly neighbours. Like, it's about focus on how far you've come, as opposed to I've messed this up, I've messed that up, and I've messed this up now. And it's never ever too late to find connection.
Really to be fighting that battle daily is
amazing.
It's immense strength, isn't it, to go through that every day, what they're doing. And like you say, they've got to focus on how far they've come.
Yeah, and thinking that it's not
the future in a good way.
Yeah, and it's not that, we have stories about ourselves that we're inadequate and all this, that, and the other. And actually, we're all the same. We're all equally as capable. But when you're in that sort of that bubble of feeling down and you're looking at all the things you wish you'd done differently, it is going to feel depressing and it is going to feel negative, when actually you've got a lot going for you, and it's never too late to change that, ever.
No, definitely not. One really simple thing that always helps me when I'm having a bad day is just getting outside in the fresh air and just looking up at the sky, and it makes you feel small again. Sylvan taught me.
Well, it's opening your world.
Down.
Yeah, seeing it looked really cool, actually.
Oh, do you know what? I love it. It's brilliant. I've not used it for ages now because of the weather. It's really rubbish. But just looking up at the stars, and I know it sounds a bit like, hippie, whatever, but I'm a little bit hippie, I guess. But it just makes you feel small, and it kind of puts everything in perspective. And just something simple like a little walk every day will just boost your mood a bit. And I've got all these books, actually. Look at all these books. These are just a few books that I thought I'd bring to the chat that have helped me. It's ridiculous.
What are you like? This is an
to
example of someone trying too hard.
Well, no, exactly, and that was kind of my point, because I went through a stage of just being obsessed with trying to read self-help books and thinking, like you always say, I need to fix myself, I need to, But now I'm kind of thinking, well, you know what, it is what it is, and some days my anxiety is bad, and other days it's not, and I just enjoy those days and make the most of it.
Yeah, and the more accepting you are of where you're at and what's going on, the less it will show up. Like, that's what happened for me over time, is I became more and more accepting of who I was and where I was at. This idea that and a mental health diagnosis or anything like that is only telling you where you're at, not who you are. And I think it's that thing of like, the less you care about it, the quicker it will go.
Absolutely,
but I know it's easier said than done when you're in it. I appreciate that,
It's hard, but sometimes, like you say, the more you talk about it, the worse it is, because it's sort of self-fulfilling, isn't it? Going, I've got anxiety, and then it's like, it's here. So it can be too much. And I've had loads of different kinds of therapies over the years. And actually, it has worked for me in that time, but it always comes back. And I think it's just something that you have to live with, ultimately.
Well,
isn't it? But
I know
if you can get tools, like what you say though, if you get tools like that you can go back to, then it can pass quicker. It may be when you have an attack.
And I think so for me, I mean, and this sounds a bit daft me saying this as a trained psychotherapist, but for me, so I was in like therapy for 10 years on and off and tried lots of different types. And again, I always believed it was something that I just had to manage for the rest of my life. And I do not actually believe that anymore, because I don't experience anxiety in the same way.
Do you never feel anxiety then now?
The only anxiety I would feel now is like, so say when I was worried about my sister being in hospital, I could feel the adrenaline in my fingers because I was obviously, my heart was racing and I was worrying. But it's totally normal. But other than that,
reaction though.
And that went then, once I go, right, okay, I know what's going on here. And then that goes quickly. But I never have, for months and years, in fact, I woke up with that gut-wrenching feeling in my stomach of dread. And that I can't even tell you the last time. It's years since I've had that.
So for instance, like I sometimes wake up and my heart's racing. And I'm like, why is my heart racing? Because I felt all right when I went to sleep. So I'll wake up and my heart's just like racing. And I'll say to Sylvan, oh God, I can't even breathe today. And I don't know why. And then my crazy brain will start telling me that something bad's going to happen. So I'm worried. So my heart's worried. So there must be something that I need to worry about.
Well, you may have just...
What do I do then? What would you
may
do
have just
in that situation?
Well, I would, because I know now how it works, it wouldn't scare me. I'd just go, I must have had a panic thought in my sleep.
Right.
I've got my thought because
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, and if you've got a busy mind generally in the day, and people will say to me so often, but I'm not thinking about anything, Sari, I'm not worried. And I'm like, you cannot experience anxiety without anxious thinking. It's just impossible. So you might not be aware that you've got a lot going on. And then usually after a bit of a conversation, you go, actually, I've got
maybe
quite a lot on my mind.
Maybe it was that triggered it.
Yeah. So it's again, it's this, your thoughts don't stop at night, just your consciousness level changes. So you're not aware of it.
I don't think my thoughts ever stop. My dreams are so vivid every night.
Yeah. So you might wake up in a panic. But in the same way, if you woke up and you'd had a dream and you'd had a dream that something bad had happened, you might even feel a bit uncomfortable for a bit when you first wake up going, oh, that was a horrible dream. But it's unlikely that you're then going to keep thinking about it all day because it's just a dream. And in a way, it's the same when we're walking. We're just walking dreamers. We're still making stuff up from random thoughts. It's the same thing. But because we're awake and aware, we think, oh, I must pay attention to that thought. It's really important. It's not.
It's our imaginations. And then another kind of branch of anxiety that I have is like sometimes we'll be watching
You've got a whole tree.
I've got a whole tree of anxious thoughts, basically. Like sometimes at night, Sylvan will be like, oh, I've heard that this box set's great. So we'll put it on, and then the minute something happens in that box set that is to do with health or someone catching a disease or a child being poorly, oh God, I have to make the sign of the cross when I say that. Anything like that, I'm like, switch it off. I can't watch it. I can't watch things that trigger me. Like, and it's a shame because sometimes Sylvan will be like, oh great, so that's another box set we can't watch because it's going to make you anxious.
But what you'll start to realise is it's not the program that's triggering you. The word trigger is a funny thing because what we think with a trigger is like everything outside of us makes us anxious. It's only ever our thoughts about what's outside of us. So we watched a program not long ago about really, really sad about dementia, like police picking up people that were lost with dementia. And so I'm in my head thinking, oh my God, that could be me one day, and that could be my husband, or oh, this is so sad. And so I then start to feel sad, or I start to feel anxious, or I start to feel something because of my thoughts about it.
You take it on board, don't you?
Yeah, you're taking it on board because you're bringing it to life in your thoughts. Whereas my husband doesn't have the same reaction because he'll just sit there probably going, oh, I recognise that roundabout. That's near such and such a place. So he doesn't feel sad because his thinking is, oh, that's the roundabout near such a... So we can experience it very differently. And again, once you... So with that program, I felt sad and a bit like, oh, it'd be awful to have dementia. But what I instantly recognised is it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm tired. My levels of consciousness and state of mind has dropped. So my thoughts are going to be a little bit more catastrophizing and a bit more contaminated. So I'm just going to not listen to them. And I just leave them be. And I think that's once you start to understand.
Your advice to me would be in those situations with the box set, don't watch it. Just don't.
You can
not like go through it.
No,
I
think you could watch it. It's not going to damage you.
But it might, and then I'd have bad dreams, and then I'd wake up with my heart racing. So then it's like boom. Then I don't eat.
And that's the thing, though. But you see, it's still about one of the biggest shifts for me in my anxiety was realizing that no matter where I had a panic attack, so it didn't matter if I was in my bed all snuggled up, or in a supermarket, or in another country, because I used to have a big thing about going abroad. It doesn't matter where you are, you experiencing it. It's still you experience it in here. It's not the supermarket or the other place. And the more you start to realize, I'll survive a panic attack or an anxiety attack wherever I am and I'll be okay, it sort of then starts to take that pressure off a little bit. It's a fine line between don't force yourself. So don't sit and watch that box series going, I can do this, and it'd be horrible. Yeah. But actually knowing, you could experiment and go, yeah, I've had those thoughts and it feels uncomfortable, but seeing that they're going to pass, because the minute you're thinking about something else, it's going to be gone. And you'll be worrying about something else. I used to, when I was anxious, and I'd have say I was really panicky, and then someone might knock at the door, and it's a postman, and you've got a sign for it, and I've got my big smile on my face, and I'm chatting to the postman, and the anxiety's nowhere to be seen, and then I'll shut the door and I'll go, right, what was I anxious about? And I'd try and get it back, because I think I had to figure it out still. And actually it had
something
gone.
I do a lot. Another branch of my anxiety trait is social anxiety. And I will avoid going out some days, or it'll get to the extent sometimes where I won't even see my friends, because I'll think, well, what am I going to talk to them about? I'll just bore them, or I'll say too much, or I'll say something stupid, and then I just get myself in a tiz, or we'll go out with friends, and then I'll come home and just dissect everything that I've said that night, and then think, oh gosh, I bet they thought I was talking about myself too much, or I didn't ask enough questions, or I said too much. And I'll obsess about it, and then I'm like, do you know what? I'm just not going to go out, because then I'm not doing anything wrong. It's like a social anxiety thing. But
it's habit.
So
in
lockdown,
social...
in lockdown, it was great for me because of my social anxiety. I was like, this is perfect, because now I can't see anyone. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go to any social event. I don't have to speak to people. I can just be on my own and do nothing wrong and say nothing wrong, and it's all fine. So lockdown for me was great in that sense, and a lot of my anxieties disappeared, because I was like, do you know what? I've got my little family bubble with me. I've got the kids with me all the time, so I know they're safe. I've got Sylvan. I was spraying all the food when he went to Sainsbury's, bringing it all back. We literally got our alcohol spray, and I was spraying every single thing for weeks. I got Sylvan doing it as well, and he's normally not anxious at all. But yeah, we were spraying everything. I was even spraying letters that came through the post. But a lot of my anxieties just dissipated. Especially the social anxiety.
Well, the reason that your anxiety disappeared is because your thinking was telling you that you were safe and you were secure and you didn't have anything to worry about. So your anxiety isn't a thing that comes or goes. Your anxiety is a result of where your thinking's at the time. That's all it is. And so, for example, in my, I always find it fascinating, in my members group, at the same time, I had one lady who was claustrophobic and fearful of small spaces, and it was really bothering her, for getting in cars and lifts and things like that. I also had another woman in the same group who had a fear of open spaces, because she felt like she didn't have something to hold on to, so she would be fearful. It was so fascinating, because you're both really anxious, and you think it's open spaces that make you anxious, and you think it's closed spaces. So how can it be any space, because you're anxious of the opposite thing? And it's only ever their perception of an open space or a closed space. It's like with fear of flying, isn't it? You know, people say, oh, I'm
Yeah.
scared of flying and I get anxious. I have to sit in the middle seat if I'm anxious. And then someone else will say, oh, no, I have to sit by the window. Because we all create these stories about how we're
We all
safe
have
and
our
how
own
we're
thing.
not.
I have little like OCDs as well. Like before I get on a plane, I have to tap the outside of it 3 times, or else I think something bad's going to happen. And I have lots more, but I won't even divulge them because they're way too weird. But I do, like, I have bits of everything, like, in my personality. It's actually just exhausting being me a lot of the time.
I think I lost you
there.
there. Yeah,
Sorry.
it's all. I'm here. They're all the same thing.
It's what?
They all amount to the same thing. Health anxiety, OCD. You know,
I think it's a control thing, isn't it? Basically, now I'm vocalizing it. I realize
trying to
that
control.
A lot of it is a control thing.
Yeah, you're trying to control the absolute uncontrollable. So no wonder you're suffering, because it's just resistance to what is, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny. It's, I don't know. It's just, I think to unpick it all, gosh, it'd take forever, wouldn't it, with everyone? But hopefully people listening will realise that whatever anxieties they've got are all, you know, all their own and unique, and you can live with it.
We're all the same. Yeah, and you can actually get to a point where you don't need to live with it, because it goes. It goes.
Yeah. You can beat it.
Yes,
meaning it won't kill you. It won't kill you. That's hopefully what our message is, or it shouldn't have to.
No, it won't. It won't kill you. I think it's really good that you speak openly about this, because I know people will really look up to you and think, oh, you know, she's an actress and she's really super confident. And for me, it's good to say, actually, your confidence is nothing to do with anxiety. You know, it doesn't mean that you're not confident or you're not able or capable. It just means that you've got a load of overthinking and you're shutting yourself off, when actually you can still be super confident, you can still be successful and do everything that you want to do.
I don't think I am. I don't think I'm very confident. I think with social situations, and I've seen a couple of messages of people who said, oh, how does it work then at Corrie? Like, you know, with my social anxiety thing of not chatting to people, I actually sit in my dressing room a lot of the time. Like, oh gosh, for ages, I didn't even go in the canteen and have lunch with people, or, you know, even, I mean, now we can't because of COVID and everything, but when things were normal, there'd be days where I'd be like, right, I'll go in the canteen today and I'll eat my lunch with someone, and like, you know, one of my friends at work would be like, yeah, well done, great, you've come in the canteen and ate your lunch with us. But then I would always go back to my dressing room and think, oh gosh, I bet they just think I'm stupid, or I said the wrong thing, or da-da-da. But it's funny, when I'm being Maria on Corrie, I don't need to worry about any of that, because I've got my script and I know what to say and I know what I'm doing there, so that's fine. So I don't really have an anxiety to do with
but is that
my work, my actual job.
But is that not just proof to you that your thoughts are creating all of that? Because the minute you are thinking as a different person, it's gone. Maria doesn't have anxious thoughts, but you do.
No, but Maria has a whole shed load of other problems, which I'm quite glad I don't have.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite a nice distraction being Maria, to be honest. I realise that my head isn't that bad a place to live in when I look at Maria's life with Gary. Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, no, it is interesting. I do like my own company. I've always been quite happy being on my own, and I think that's probably because of my anxieties, really, and worrying what people would think, and sort of getting close to people as well, to be open about it, that they wouldn't think I'm weird for having them.
Yeah, and that they're not going to abandon you as a friend or...
Yeah, and it's only in like the last couple of years even that people have become more open about saying that they've got anxiety or depression or OCDs or whatever the mental health issues that they might have are. But it's made me feel like when I first said that I suffer with anxiety, it was like a weight off my shoulders, because the amount of people who messaged me and said, I have it, or I can relate to that, and it's like, oh gosh, I'm not crazy then. It's all right. Yeah. It's okay to talk about this and not have people think that you're nuts. Because I'm not nuts. Absolutely. It's just something that I work with, in my mind.
Yeah, you're a habitual overthinker. That's all you are. It's not you've got into a massive habit of overthinking absolutely everything, and it's a habit that you can change.
Yeah, I overthink everything. even like if I walk past someone on the street and I don't smile enough, or they don't smile at me enough, I think, have I said something to them? Have I offended them? Was I rude? What are they thinking about me?
Yeah, and the thing is, you weren't born like that. So that's, again, people say, oh, I've got anxiety now, I've got to just live with it. We're not born with it. So
Yeah.
so why do we then believe it's a permanent thing that we've got to live with? We don't, you know, but
Yeah.
it's only when we understand more about how it works and it becomes less powerful that it then starts to bugger off, because it realizes, you know, you're not going to get the whole singing and dancing. For me, I find my heart's racing. It just is a little sign to me to go, oh, you must have a really busy mind at the minute. Maybe do something nice, or and that's where it stops, rather than it getting to the point where I'm bolt right up at night, awake, and all of that stuff. It doesn't need to get to that point,
because you've got in control of it. I think I'm getting there. I am getting there.
Well, you'll always be learning, and always learning. And I think, you know, for me, there is, again, that fine line between not trying too hard, but also at the same time exploring what it means to be a human being and how it all works, but without making it a full-time job, you know.
Yeah. It's just finding your own ways through it, isn't it, basically, and what works for you. Totally. I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks so much for doing this with me,
Sarah. It's a pleasure.
You've really taken,
it's a pleasure.
You've taken the anxiousness out of it for me. The irony. I hope everyone found it like useful, and hopefully
I'm sure they will.
Help some people.
But you know, the one thing
if you can answer anyone's questions, if you
of course. I was just going to say, the one thing about going online, what I've found is some people will think what you're saying is a load of shit, and some people find it really helpful. But hey ho, you can't please everybody, and as long as you can help some, then to me that's good enough.
If this has helped even one person realise that they're not alone, and that, you know, we can all help each other through it, and hopefully
and we're
get
all
through
human.
this year together. Yeah, exactly.
We will. One day at a time.
We can do this.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
This
too shall pass.
Yes. Oh, brilliant.
Everyone's asked me how to save this. How do I save it, Sorry, do you know?
When it ends now, it'll say, do you want to save to Instagram TV? So click yes.
Right, and then we can direct everyone to your page, Sari Taylor.
And
then they can go to you for more advice.
I can forward them to podcasts or books or anything with what they want. So yeah, just send me a message, not a problem.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much. And everyone, thanks for watching. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.